Hey, Friendo, Steve here.
And Larson.
And welcome back to Ask Steve and Larson. That's right, it's Wednesday. That means we answer your questions. Whether you're a patron at patreon.com/Steve and Larson or a YouTube channel member by clicking join, that's who's asking the questions. Steve and Larson have the answers. Larson, what's the first question?
First question comes from Luis. Luis asked, did Cody overcomplicate his AEW run? So perhaps a bit of context here. So Cody was just on, not Sam Wrestling, Sam Roberts' podcast.
Sure.
Said this about towards the end of his AEW run. Quote, says, I think trying to do what I was doing there at the end was a bit too meta. Hey, the thing we wanted you is to turn heel. So for me to do that and turn heel is by saying verbally out loud, I'm not going to do it, which is being a heel. But it didn't work in a sense, and it did because I had a really fun match with Ethan Page where the crowd was going nuts. And I love the polarized crowds, the split crowds. I love the polarized split crowds because obviously I'm part of the Cena era of our industry, so I loved it. But it might have been over the heads of people, but everything was going to such a unique direction, multiple shows and money was through the roof in the industry. It was really wonderful.
So I'm going to defend Cody, which
not surprising,
which is not shocking at all. And I'll defend him by saying this. So to answer the actual question, did he overcomplicate it? Maybe. However, did Orson Welles overcomplicate filmmaking when he created Citizen Kane? No, because that movie was a success, and Cody Rhodes' last run in AEW was a failure.
If anything, in a lot of ways, Orson Welles undercomplicated because he wanted that depth of field. It's less like editing and shots. There was action going on in multiple planes.
Right, I know. I'm not going to get into that conversation, but let's talk about Cody Rhodes.
Yes.
So, on one hand, I absolutely appreciate that he was trying something that, in his estimation anyways, and I think maybe there's some validation to this, hadn't been done in pro wrestling before. Going sort of in his own estimation, the meta route where I'm not going to be a heel. How many times did he tease the pedigree and he would never hit the pedigree? I can appreciate somebody who used this company they helped to build as a bit of a play box, a sandbox, if you will, to experiment with new things. Now, none of those things that he was trying really were successful. So did he overcomplicate it? Yeah, I think he did. If the idea was, hey, I'm trying out some new things to be a heel. I kind of feel like it's in the same respect as, and maybe it's a different situation because I feel like with Bray Wyatt, there's simply compromise that just ends most of his stories with a dud. I think Bray wants to do something that might be interesting, but we never know because it's compromised by the people up top making decisions like, let's stick you in a Mountain Dew match. With Cody, his problem in AEW wasn't that he was trying to be too meta. His problem was not only did he write himself out of the world title scene, he wrote himself out of the company. If you remember, we referred to Cody Rhodes' time in AEW towards the last, whatever year or so, as Cody Island. He wouldn't feud with other people, and it was bizarre. And he being on Cody Island really is not the place to be experimenting, especially when you're the boss. Now, if he had, let's say, some sort of feud with Kenny Omega. Now, I forget exactly what Kenny was doing at the time, if he was a bad guy. But if he had feuded with somebody who was also ingrained in the company, where he could explore those issues, where he could explore the story ideas with a partner that had the same kind of input and was bouncing ideas off each other, maybe that's something that maybe they could have found common ground on and reached an interesting and satisfying to the crowd conclusion. But I think that Cody's issues had far more to do with his seeming reluctance to work with a lot of people in the company. I mean, you and I heard about at the time, there were emails that sort of indicated there was a difference in philosophy between the various founders of the various people who are the various EVPs, basically the Elite and Cody Rhodes. And it seemed like Cody wanted a much more Georgia Championship wrestling philosophy, which in the end, if he had stayed, might have worked given what they're doing on Collision right now.
Yeah, it totally would have.
But it maybe because it was really that last chunk of time that he was there, maybe at that point, because I hold by this. Cody, I think, was at one point Tony Khan was Tony Khan's right-hand man when it came to understanding week-to-week wrestling creative on TV. I think at some point he got frozen out. And at that point, maybe he was like, I'm just going to start doing some interesting stuff, or at least some stuff that I want to try. I want to work on my solo album instead of I want to be my Tom York on a laptop instead of being with Radiohead. Maybe that's the situation. I don't know. Did he overcomplicate it? Probably, because he was trying to do some shit that maybe he hadn't seen before. I'll give you some points for effort, but in terms of it being a success, obviously it wasn't, because the crowd they'd wanted nothing to do with him.
Yeah. Going back to him kind of taking himself out of the world title picture, that was, to an extent, I get it. You're one of the bosses. You don't want to seem like you're running your own territory for your own benefit. I get it. But at the same time, you're one of the top guys in the company. And for so early in the company's history to take yourself out of the world title picture, really hamstrung a lot of his potential stories in the future, because then he couldn't get involved in the upper mid card for the most part, because those pursuits generally lead to the title.
Right. Yeah.
The whole stretch that Kenny had both belts, the AEW and the Impact title, and the Mega Championship for that matter.
Yeah.
Cody couldn't get involved in that whatsoever because he was frozen out of the AEW title picture from like the genesis of the company. Almost, he overthought things.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't like a situation where the fans were going to get upset if Kenny wins the title. No, that was expected. I think a lot of fans were actually kind of disappointed when Kenny wasn't the first champion.
Well, no, if you're that first whole year, that was the biggest complaint. It's like, we're here to see all elite wrestling, and the elite are just letting everybody else do everything else.
Exactly. They're building for the future, was what we heard. And so for Cody, who, if Kenny was more popular than Cody at the time, it wasn't by much.
Right, yeah.
To take himself out of the title picture so soon, and to never, I know, they had the TNT title. He tried to make that a huge thing, and for a good stretch it was. But it's not the world title. It's not the top title in that company.
Yeah.
And again, from the very beginning, just overcomplicating things. You got the Cody Island stuff, and he seemed like he was, for stretches, content to work with, do programs with other members of the Nightmare family, and if the goal there was to advance the careers of some of his students, then hats off to Cody, because that's great to take your star power and use that to try to get over younger talents. And I'll never fault Cody for that. But a lot of the stories would take weird twists and turns and weird detours, and it's interesting. On Cody Island, there seemed to be a relative lack of cohesive vision, considering it felt like he was booking his own stuff.
It did, yeah.
And we'd have these conversations. Is Cody trying to be a heel? Is he lacking any and all self-awareness about how his character is being presented? And for him to say the most heel thing a heel could do is say, "I'm not a heel," yeah, maybe that's one part of the recipe. There's a lot more that goes into it than just being out there and getting maybe a mildly negative reaction from the crowd and say, "Oh, people want me to turn heel." No, I'm not going to do that.
Well, dude, we often talk about it because it was so shocking to see it in execution. The Face of the Revolution ladder match, the year Cody was in it, how there was that spot where Cody was injured, he went out of the match, and yet every shot, and dude, honestly, it's one of those things. And again, when you talk about him, I'll bring up another movie besides Citizen Kane, and it's the exact opposite of the spectrum. Southland Tales, a movie that you and I know well, and we've talked about oftentimes, because it's coming off the heels of a wildly successful movie, Donnie Darko, where the director, Richard Kelly, all of a sudden had all sorts of stroke and he decided to go ahead and make the movie that he wanted to make. And it wasn't just a movie. It was a movie, several graphic novels. I think there were other aspects of maybe a coloring book. I don't know. But he made this movie, and evidently at that point he had such stroke that he could do whatever he wanted to do. And the movie ended up being an abject disaster. Not to say there weren't some interesting ideas within the movie. I thought that his take on the time travel aspect in that movie, I thought, just like in Donnie Darko, I thought was interesting and a bit different than we've seen before. I thought there were certain aspects here and there of that movie that worked. It's just the entirety of it just fell apart. And that's sort of the same thing that you could say about Cody Rhodes that last stretch in AEW, is that the idea that, okay, let's have this Face of the Revolution ladder match, but my ego is such that the cameras can't leave me.
Yeah.
Like, are we to believe that he is telling the truck never take a camera off me? Or or is, like, you know, the eye of God, the camera guy, the camera guys and the director.
The omniscient camera, yes.
Are they infatuated with Cody, or are they supposed to be out of the equation? Like, what's the philosophy behind it? What's the story behind it?
And if the idea is at the time Cody is a heel, and that is heel behavior, telling someone in the truck to keep him in the shot the whole time.
Right.
I mean, I get it. I get it in theory, but in practice, it just doesn't fit within the rest of the language of pro wrestling, of how pro wrestling is photographed within the rest of the show.
Yeah, I think there's a way that you can that concept works.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, when he calls it meta, I could see it being that way, because it was, look, and again, I'm honestly not saying this because I'm a Cody fan, which obviously, you know, I am. Yeah. But if that was the case, that he was like, hey, no matter what, make sure I'm in a shot because I'm doing this thing.
Yeah.
At least it's something new. And it might have fallen apart in execution, which you and I will both admit that it did.
Yeah.
But it generated a hell of a conversation afterwards, if I remember our review correctly. Like, we were talking like, what is this guy doing? Like, is he self-aware? And it seems like he absolutely was. Mm-hmm. It's just he wasn't aware about the most important thing is it going to work or is it working?
Yeah.
And it really didn't.
No, it didn't. And going back to the Richard Kelly analogy, the reason Donnie Darko worked is because the distributor who bought the film out of the festival circuit re-edited it.
That's
you watch
true,
the director's cut, it's an absolute mess.
It's not as good. It's not nearly as good.
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah. They actually.
So maybe Cody's the type that has ideas, but he needs a collaborator. He needs someone to oversee the process, to have the vision for where things are going. And then Cody could sprinkle his ideas in there. Maybe that works best. I mean, so far in WWE, we haven't seen instances of him trying some stuff that may be too meta or maybe meta. It just seems to be he's telling the story, and he's sticking to the story he's telling. And WWE is saying, all right, this is a story. This is a story you're telling. And so far it's working. Now, if he tries to get too cute with some of this stuff, then maybe we have to open up the conversation again of, okay, is he trying something a little too meta without a coherent vision behind it?
I'll have to listen to that podcast, because I wonder if there was pressure on him, given that everybody said Cody was the guy who's bringing the old school wrestling. These guys are moving it forward. I wonder if there was ever any pressure on him to attempt to give us his own version of moving wrestling forward.
Doing an avant-garde wrestling storyline, huh? Like on to be the French new wave of wrestling stories.
Hey, for all we know, he was emailing with Werner Herzog back and forth. You know, remember that line from Grizzly Man where he's like, Timothy seems to be reluctant to remove himself from the frame. I'm pretty sure we made that analogy in the review as well.
Could be.
Cody Man, yeah. Wrestling Man.
Next question here from Andre Zimpel. Andre asks, is this the next question? Nope, I skipped one. Sorry, Nikyle. We'll get to Andre's question in a second. Nikyle here asks, after Cody Rhodes is done with Brock, assuming the story with Brock finishes at SummerSlam, what should the next chapter of his story be between SummerSlam and Survivor Series?
Oh, man, you know, I know right now the rumor that I've seen, and I have no idea if this is substantial or if this is one of those things where people, you know, proposed
want
and then
it
it's
want it to be so. Yes.
Right, yeah. But, you know, obviously the name Bray Wyatt has been thrown around. That's a risk. That's a big risk because Bray's stories don't land very often. They have the most beautiful setups. Yeah. I mean, man, looking back on his last return, boy, they just had magic in a bottle. They really did. It was fantastic. But then it all just fell apart. I do think, though, that if there is an end point between Cody and Bray, if that's the feud, that because I would love to see it. It'd be like two of my favorite dudes.
Yeah.
If there is an actual end point that they agree, I think the thing about Bray is that maybe he should start writing from the end and going back.
Yeah.
Because you got to get a definitive, interesting conclusion. You got to nail that. Because all this coming out week after week and dropping promos that say nothing just absolutely killed whatever momentum he had from that beginning. And then you get into a thing with LA Knight, which is, again, you get into a thing with, and I don't know if they knew it at the time, the most bulletproof star they have.
Yeah.
And so that really wouldn't work. I feel like Cody is willing to get a bit corny with a Bray Wyatt story.
Yeah.
And I think if you channel maybe some of that Kevin Sullivan cult-like stuff, for a story with Cody Rhodes, I think there could be some interesting stuff. It's definitely a risk. It's much more of a risk than a Brock Lesnar situation.
Yeah, it definitely is. I saw the chatter about Cody and Bray for all the reasons you mentioned. I was kind of, I don't know, because as mentioned, the endpoint nebulous, stories tend to fizzle. Is it the right kind of adversity for Cody to get him more over with the crowd? But then I saw a still of Cody was apparently Husky Harris's mentor in NXT.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Unless someone's really good at Photoshop and put together with the right filter so it looked like it was old.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, all right. There's a through line there. And as long as you don't take too many tangents away from the major through line, there could be something there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
And that's the thing with Bray. It feels like there's a genesis of an idea that's usually very good, or at least very interesting about where it could go. And then maybe some vague beats to hit, but that's kind of it. This is an execution with Bray. You know, he's been sidetracked with people maybe derailing his creative injuries. And so we've never really got to see maybe Bray's vision of one of his stories he concocts.
Yeah, right.
Seen through to the end.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And so, but if it's a relatively simple story, made interesting by two strong, well-defined characters,
yeah,
that could do a lot for Cody, and it could do a hell of a lot for Bray Wyatt, who just came back with a really fascinating setup for his return, and then within a couple weeks, especially after the LA Knight feud, just seemed to be floating around aimlessly.
Yeah. No, I'd love to see it. I mean, beyond if Bray's not the thing, keep him away from LA Knight because we know that won't end good for Cody.
No.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, probably maybe the obvious one, although I feel like they're going to be feuding internally, is maybe Judgment Day. You could do something there, maybe. But they're probably going to have the World Heavyweight Championship. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe you can give. I mean, I don't know if it'd be too close to Brock Lesnar, at least in the very generic, but like Bronson Reed, he's got some steam behind him right now. I mean, it's a one pay-per-view, maybe even a Raw main event as opposed to like a pay-per-view.
Yeah. I'm sure. Here's somebody, and I'm sure they're a ways out from returning from injury, but Braun Strowman.
Oh yeah, that could be.
If you bring Braun back to his days of destroying everything during his feud with Roman.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that could be.
But I think he's a ways out from returning from injury.
You're probably right. Yeah.
So we'll see. All right, on to Andre Zimpel's question. Andre asked, there have been many important moments in wrestling as a whole, Hogan slamming Andre, Koloff beating Bruno, and many others, but if you had to decide, what was the most important or significant moment in wrestling, and what would that be? I think is the singular defining moment in the history of professional wrestling.
I mean, I would probably I would probably say WrestleMania 1 because the events that surrounded WrestleMania 1 were like redefined professional wrestling. McMahon trying to take, Georgia Championship Wrestling, taking that time slot and then and putting his own bullshit on there. It's like people are like, oh man, what happened to Flair and all these guys and Dusty Rhodes? And then all of a sudden you have Madison Square Garden. They're acting like this shit's real, and it's like it's just crap. It's like we want our Georgia Championship Wrestling. We want our good stuff here.
Yeah.
And then McMahon sold that back, and he used that money that he made to do WrestleMania 1. Mm-hmm. And it seemed like that was the major turning point in terms of WWF nationally became synonymous with pro wrestling. Yeah. They turned it into a pop culture phenomenon that became a global thing. So my gut says the big turning point was WrestleMania 1.
All right, I got 2. 1, Goldust Trio, creating modern pro wrestling as we
creating
know it.
Fake, yeah, okay,
yeah, with choreographed matches, planned finishes. I would assume at that point matches were no longer 2 hours long.
Sure, yeah,
maybe they were. I don't know. But in a lot of ways, establishing what pro wrestling.
Hey, Billy Sandow, I got a great idea for an 8-day match.
There we go. 8 days of collar and elbow tie-ups. You win with double wrist lock.
Right, exactly.
Another one. I'll take what you said about Vince a little bit further back when he bought WWF from his dad.
Okay, sure, yeah.
He had one of the largest territories in the country.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
You can make the case maybe the top territory because it's the Northeast.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
In terms of your home base is Madison Square Garden. I'm sure that territory is making a ton of money.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And he bought it from his dad like pennies on the dollar,
mm-hmm.
and was able pretty quickly then to, go
nationalize it. Yeah.
I guess going back as far as Vince buying the territory from his dad is kind of like the inciting incident of everything that would follow.
Right. Yeah.
Those two I think were pretty pivotal.
Mm-hmm.
Forks in the road for the wrestling business. Like if Tootsmond and crew just had thought, oh, let's choreograph these matches and have planned finishes, we could still be watching 2-hour collar and elbow tie-up matches on our TV right now.
I suspect wrestling just would have died. Like pro wrestling just would not have lived. They would have. No. It'd have been like, oh yeah, we used to have spectacles. I don't know what other sort of carnival spectacles were there beyond pro wrestling that if they were kayfabed would have blown up by today. I have no idea.
I don't know either. I don't know.
Were there I have no idea. Anyways, I feel like those are pretty big ones. Yeah. Before we continue on, we have a couple of pre-recorded ad reads.
Do we have to do these? Oh.
Look, man, we're trying to make $1.01 here. Okay, we got to make some of that money back that we're paying these celebrity impersonators. So
this is your deal. I had nothing to do with this.
This is a behind-the-scenes conversation.
Do you understand that at the least acid reflux? I might be getting an ulcer because of all this.
Hey, do you know you're probably just still, I don't know, burpy from playing basketball or lunch or something. I don't know. Have you noticed
make me burpy.
The cool hat that I'm wearing? It says Friendo Club in this cool metal font.
Yeah, it's hard for me to notice with all the stomach pain, but yeah, I've noticed it.
2014, it affects your eyes. And then I got this completely legal homage shirt from WrestleJuice right here.
Oh, don't show that off too much.
They're both available right now at friendoshop.com. That's right. We got our purple merch line, and we've got an ad read from celebrity impersonator Ed Manning. The Ed Man is back, Larson. Let's see what he has to say about this purple merch. Do you love purple things like Grimace and Grimace Shakes and Engorged Bell Ends? You go to friendoshop.com and use code PURPLE and you can get 20% off the entire store. If you want to dress to the nines so you can 69.
No, come on.
Let you find at the bar, then head to friendoshop.com. 20% off, code PURPLE. Thank you very much, Ed Manning. And then we've got Phil McDonald, our Stone Cold Steve Austin impersonator here, to do a little ad for our Patreon. Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Stone Cold Steve Austin impersonator Phil McDonald. That's right. Do you like to 69? Do you know what's even better than that? Supporting Steven Larson by clicking join on YouTube or going to the Patreon at patreon.com/Steven Larson. We're talking bonus episodes. We're talking predictions, challenges, and, of course, question and answer threads. Also, they'll send you nudes. That's right, patreon.com/Steven Larson.
No.
Or go to YouTube. Don't interrupt me. I am an AI-generated, pre-recorded ad read.
Doesn't make any sense.
It makes perfect sense. This is pre-recorded. And youtube.com/Steven Larson. Click join or get a Thez Press. Did you know that yesterday when I was doing my stream, the MF Steve here stream, Dr. Tom Pritchard won a match with a Luthez Press.
Oh, how about that?
It was kind of awesome. Thank you once again, Phil McDonald and
Did
Ed
you listen
Manning.
to any of these pre-recorded ads before you roll them?
No. They just give me the file. I plunk it into the thing. I don't even know how to listen to it in advance because I'm not a tech wizard.
Ugh.
What's the next question, Larson?
Blake Whitehouse. It says, given how Kane had a legendary career when 75 to 8% of the time his creative was horrible, is it sometimes on the performer to get themselves over despite bad creative? I don't think it's sometimes the responsibility of the performer to get themselves over.
You were going to give me a big dramatic yes or no. You went, and then you
I
just
was going to
started...
say no, but I was going to. I don't think exclusively no. I don't think if someone gives you a lemons, you're responsible for making it lemonade, because some of that shit is dreadful, regardless if you do a good job with it or not. We've seen numerous times where performers take a terrible idea, are all in, and make it palatable.
Yeah, right.
You know, but by and large, when that happens, it's not like necessarily that leads to other things that are, more prominent, more important.
Yeah.
I think in Kane's case, in terms of the wrestling career, it's more of a legacy thing. I think he's generally seen as, a well-respected wrestling performer.
Yeah, right. In the world of wrestling.
In the world of wrestling.
Yeah, right.
Not outside.
Not outside.
In the world of wrestling.
In the world of wrestling. Because
he had like a 30-year career.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a former champion. He's cashed in Money in the Bank. There's all these accolades, I know. And I think most of the most noteworthy or memorable stuff that he did as a wrestling performer was probably earlier in his career.
I think you're exactly right. I think people have, people will forget a lot of bullshit,
Yeah.
They'll often, I'm not going to say forget, but, it's when you talk about for example, The Last Dance, the Michael Jordan doc, man, talk about the Wizards. So I feel like with Kane, you remember the cool stuff. You remember how, he was, as a character, iconic. He really was.
Yeah.
The look, the lore.
The packaging for the character of Kane was great. Yes.
It was awesome. It really was. And then, you forget the other, you don't forget Katie Vick, but I don't think anybody really looks at that and weights that too heavily against his legacy, because that was basically Triple H. But yeah, as far as like, is it on somebody else to get themselves over? I don't know how that's even under Vince McMahon. I don't know how that's possible. Now, if you're a House of Torture and you're told to go out there and do some comedy stuff when you look like a supernatural act, that's on them to then get that over with the crowd.
Yeah.
I could see that, and they did.
Yeah.
When you are seemingly in the WWE going back a year and before then, if you have bad creative and you get yourself over, sometimes you'll piss off Vince McMahon. You look at Zack Ryder. He got himself over, and Vince McMahon treated him like shit. That happened a lot.
Look at Damian Sandow. You think putting him with The Miz was supposed to be a push?
Right, yeah, exactly, yeah.
And he got himself over. Did that lead to anything? No.
No, not at all. Not at all.
So there's been numerous instances of people take bad creative. Here's an example. Remember when they broke up Rusev and Lana?
Yeah,
they had Lana, do the thing with Dolph.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody looked good out of that because it was terrible creative.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Rusev, Miro, was doing all he could to make that stuff entertaining.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
And it still was garbage.
Yeah.
Garbage creative. And it led to nothing.
Yeah. Now, if you are, here's the thing, like, if you're given bad creative and you phone it in, you're not doing yourself any favors
Obviously,
either.
yes. Yeah.
So, I mean, regardless of what you're doing, you probably want to try to, it's funny, dude. Again, here's an outside wrestling reference, but Star Trek Deep Space Nine, the doctor character, Dr. Julian Bashir, right?
Mm-hmm.
Late in the run, like 5th season, I think, it's revealed that he's a genetically modified individual, and that's why he's like so good at what he does.
Uh-huh.
The actor hated it. He hated it. And throughout the rest of the run, like the next year or so, anyways, the actor was giving, and he admitted this later, he was like, I would read the lines and put nothing into them. And everybody knew I was pissed. And you can see him read these lines like a dead person. The thing is, it coincided with the big war storyline where every week they were talking about losing thousands of friends and troops and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So it oddly worked. As a teenager growing up watching it, I never thought that was a possibility.
Wow.
I just thought he was doing a really good job acting because he used to be so happy-go-lucky and carefree, and now he's all depressed. Well, he was given bad creative, and he phoned it in. It happened to work, but I think in pro wrestling, it's not the same. Everybody knows if you're checked out, but if you really give it your all, hey, I want to know what Rusev's going to do in AEW now that they picked him up. I'm happy about that. And sure enough, he delivers. Oh, yeah. But in the fans' minds, if you're really giving your all and they know you've been given bad creative, they will appreciate that shit.
Yeah, the fans will get behind you if you make the best out of some bad creative. If the company get behind you, that's I think the track record there is not as good.
Yeah.
Dank Meme Center asks, what's the likelihood they use the Rumble for WrestleMania 40 World Heavyweight Championship program and bring back No Way Out as Elimination Chamber match for Cody Rhodes to overcome an opportunity for a WWE title match at WrestleMania 40? Here's the thing. I understand Elimination Chamber. It's this structure. It's barbaric. People get hurt in it. There's 6 people in that match, including Cody. In the Rumble, there's 30. And if you have Cody come in at 1 or 2, he has to go through the other 28 or 29 wrestlers in that match to win. Those are odds. That's adversity.
It is.
If Cody's story between Mania 39 and Mania 40 is Cody overcoming adversity, fighting, clawing, doing everything he needs to do to get back to WrestleMania to face Roman Reigns again. I know he just won the Rumble, but he did it at 30. He's got to win the Rumble from 1 or 2.
Yeah.
That's maximum adversity for him.
It is. I mean, you're right. The chamber is pretty brutal, but there's only a couple people in it, and nobody really remembers. I mean, I know there's memorable chamber matches.
They don't do video packages behind the numbers for Elimination Chamber matches. You know,
they don't.
They do it for the Rumble.
They do it for the Rumble. Yeah, the Rumble is the thing. I agree 1,000%.
John Hosey says, do you think that the Judgment Day story could last as long as Bloodline story and be as successful or profitable?
Yes. Well, the profitable, I don't know. That's hard. Roman Reigns' story is really, I mean, dude, this story is 10 years old. It really is. It goes back ages. I mean, you could say it starts 3 years ago, but the trauma was 10 years.
Yeah, for all their failures of getting Roman over as top babyface in years past, it was effort to build a brand for him within the company.
Yeah.
That carried on through the story, obviously. And without those efforts, I don't know if the Bloodline story would be as profitable as it is now.
I agree. I totally agree. There's so much history that they are actively mining, and it is very interesting. So in terms of drawing the numbers that the Bloodline draws, I don't think that Judgment Day, I would doubt that Judgment Day can get there. I think they can. Here's the thing, though. I do think that they can tell, because I think the performers are so good.
Yeah.
I think they can totally tell a story that is absolutely compelling. They'll just have to do it without the built-in history of the Bloodline, which might be more difficult, but I think they could totally tell a really compelling story. It's going to be real. I don't know what WWE is going to do after the Bloodline. It's going to be difficult to come back from that.
It is. Yeah, I don't know what they're going to do either. If they can come up with a really interesting twist on what they do with Judgment Day that really gets people talking, I don't know what that is offhand. It seems like we're leading to a pretty basic story of betrayal down the road at some point, whether it's Finn stabbing Priest in the back or vice versa. If they can come up with a real interesting take, like they did with Bloodline, because the heart of the Bloodline story is betrayal. It has been since Seth broke up the Shield. That's what's at the core of the Bloodline story, is Roman's fear of betrayal. If they can come up with a real interesting angle to the Judgment Day story, and it gets people talking, and we have these segments that are memorable, that get people chattering about it on internet, around the water cooler, then I don't know if it'll be as successful or as profitable, but you can get some legs out of that story.
Yeah, for sure.
Like they had with Bloodline. 3 years, I don't know if it'll go that long, but maybe till next summer. It's entirely possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Royal Kong, another Judgment Day question, asks, could you build a face faction to go up against Judgment Day? Who would be in your faction? What name must it have?
Oh, man. God, a face faction.
All right, I got it.
Okay, go ahead.
There's no rhyme or reason behind putting any of these people together, but
okay.
We'll roll with it.
Yeah.
Becky Lynch.
Okay.
Alpha Academy.
Oh.
LA Knight.
Oh, wow. That is the most AEW faction.
It is.
Like, we just shove people together.
I know.
Oh, man. To go against Judgment Day, a face faction. Okay, let me ask you this.
All right.
Let's say somehow, some way, the Viking Raiders and Valhalla end up being good guys.
All right.
Who do you put with them? Not LA Knight. Who do you put with them to counter the Judgment Day?
Braun Strowman.
He could be a Viking. I could see that. You're all in on Braun coming back, huh? I don't know if they
Braun
actually.
Breaker.
What if they did do the Bray Wyatt faction?
All right, yeah.
You get Bray, Alexa after she's given birth to her kid. Bray, Alexa, Eric Young, and Mike Bennett.
Mike Bennett. All right.
Yeah, there you got you.
Mike Bennett.
I don't know. Find two other guys. That's fuck it. Put Viking. Viking. Who cares about Vikings? Rebrand them into Bray guys.
All right.
Extended family. Oh man, you guys are my new family. I love
that's
you.
good.
Bring back Redbeard.
There you go.
And NWO Redbeard.
Exactly. More importantly.
Yeah.
RW here asked, Russell Talk mentioned that they have a feeling that Chad Gable and Maxine will eventually turn on Otis.
Oh.
So if this was to happen, would you try to bring Mandy Rose back if possible? If not, who would be better to team with Otis?
Oh, man, I love Mandy Rose. I think she's great, and I wish that they would be open-minded enough about bringing her back, but the problem is you start showing your butthole places. They have a problem with that. I'm not saying that that's a good thing. Oh, man. Mandy and Otis together again? Fuck yeah. Yeah, you do it. They're not going to, though. I would love for them to do that.
No, they're not going to, but that'd be pretty great if they did.
Could they recast Mandy Rose?
With who?
Nikita Lyons. She's like, hi, I'm Mandy Rose, part 2. Part 2? What? That's asinine. Oh, yeah. Come on, Mandy Rose sequel. I don't know. I got nothing for that one.
Yeah, yeah. It'd be
Mandy
great
Rose ain't coming back. She ain't coming back.
No, I know. Happening. She probably isn't coming back, but it'd be great if they did bring her back.
How about this?
What?
How about this?
What?
Otis, having been rejected by Maxine and Chad Gable, turns to his he finds a new passion, and it's bodybuilding. But he performs the way he is, and he's wildly successful. And of course, all the bodybuilding performances happen on the Raw stage.
Of course, yeah.
They bring out a bunch of bodybuilders and they all pose off, and Otis is up there with them, all super glazed up and tan. Yeah, and he wins all of them.
Yeah.
But then Maxine and Chad No, he starts doing that while they're still together. They get jealous of his success. They turn on him. He brings in his bodybuilding friend, Jordan Grace.
Oh, there we go.
Right?
Yes.
And it doesn't have to be like a romance. It could just be like, hey, this is my training friend. This is my training
They train
partner.
together. Exactly.
Right, exactly. That's good.
Khan Noonien Singh.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Khan.
Villain.
Khan.
Asked,
Jeff Jarrett recently said that Impact as a brand is tainted by the bad perception of the mid-2010s and they should do a rebranding in order to escape the stigma. Do you agree with him, and what would you rename that brand?
Boy, that's a tricky one. If Jeff Jarrett says that, I believe it. And I've always kind of felt like, I think you and I have had conversations back in the day about how maybe it would be easier just for them to scrub the decks, start fresh with that great roster they have, and move on from there. But then you're missing out on a lot of good history that people are really enjoy.
There's a lot of really passionate TNA Impact Wrestling fans out there.
There are.
And here's the thing. Like if I'd read this 3 years ago, I'd be like, wipe the slate clean. Rename it to anything else. It's an improvement. And I know Impact doesn't
anything
really
else
have
wrestling AEW could.
Yes. I know Impact doesn't have the best TV deal. But you got to give a lot of credit to Scott D'Amore for rehabilitating the image of Impact Wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
He managed to get a deal worked out where they can work with New Japan again.
Yeah, I know.
That seemed inconceivable 4 years ago, and to see what he's done leading Impact from a creative standpoint, from building up talent. It's at this point, I don't know if it'd be a net positive to change the name, because I feel like now Impact's starting to earn some goodwill based on what they're doing. They won. I never really watched Impact until 2 years ago. I know it took Kenny Omega being the Impact champ to kind of get me in that door, but that wasn't what kept me there.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Is how well Scott D'Amore books the women's division.
It was Honor No More is what kept you there.
It was Honor No More. It was the depth of the tag division.
Mm-hmm.
It was the depth of the roster all around. Some interesting creative ideas. That's what kept me watching, even after Kenny had dropped that title to Christian.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And I think at this juncture, Impact's starting, the goodwill of the Impact name is starting to come back a little.
Yeah, right.
And will they ever get a major TV deal on a major cable network again? I don't know. They certainly probably won't ever get 2 million viewers a week like they did in their prime.
Well, the thing about Impact, it's really unfair to compare them to what AEW's done, because AEW, more than anything, they had a massive budget. I know Impact has money. They don't have billionaire money.
No.
And Tony Khan sunk a ton into AEW, and he was able to, and he was, and on top of that, he had the relationships necessary for a TNT, for a TBS, Turner, Warner Brothers Discovery. He had those relationships. He had NFL relationships, obviously, because his family owns the Jaguars. And that kind of infrastructure is necessary to build an AEW, plus the perfect storm of WWE being crappy, people wanting an alternative, and a loaded free agent market. So, I know people say, well, one of the questions we get is, what will it take for Impact to get to AEW's level? I don't know that unless they had a stupid amount of money. I'm talking about if the Saudi Public Investment Fund came in and was like, hey, we want to own our wrestling company because things with WWE fell apart, or we didn't, buy them. Then maybe, then you'd have problems with getting an actual TV contract. But if something similarly huge happened, then maybe we'd be talking. But Impact they just don't have the money. It all comes down to money. You can, if you have enough of that, you can get yourself anywhere, really.
Yeah. Let's lightning around some of these questions.
Yeah.
Guardian Ape has one here. With the rumors of The Undertaker set to be in Detroit for SummerSlam weekend and Bray Wyatt ready to return, could we see potential pairing of the two?
No, Undertaker's retired.
What if he's Bray Wyatt's manager? Seems a little mundane for the dead man, huh?
A little bit. Yeah, I'm not going to lie. A little bit mundane. Yeah.
So no, that's a no from Steve.
Shot that one down.
Yeah, just quickly.
I mean, what are they going to do? Some sort of Zordon thing where, like, Bray is backstage and he's got some sort of, spiritual FaceTime with Mark Calloway. Like, he's not going to travel. He's not going to go and, like, hang out with him while Bray wrestles. No, it's not going to.
Do you see that video clip of Undertaker giving Vince crap for his performance at Mania, the Stone Cold match?
No, that sounds awesome, though. I want to see that.
Yeah.
That sounds great. I want to see that.
It was pretty funny. Bucket Dipper, if you had to do a traditional men's and women's brand versus brand 5v5 Survivor Series match this year, who would you include?
I don't know.
You don't like these questions.
I hate those questions.
All right.
I'll do it, because I don't want to, dump on anybody. I would do Lashley's group. Lashley, the Prophets, Mello, and Trick versus Judgment Day. What is that?
And
that's 3 guys?
4. It's 3 guys, yeah. The Rhea would be 4.
Yeah, I'd put Rhea in it, but they're not going to do that. And then one other
JD,
person.
You want JD with Judgment Day?
Yeah, sure. Devlin, yeah, sure. Why not?
Sure, Devlin. All right.
Yeah.
How about... No, that's good. It's
perfect.
Faction versus faction. Can't really beat that.
Great.
Peter Lewins here says, what stip would you use for Cody versus Brock 3?
Is that going to have a stipulation to it? Didn't Cody say?
Better hurry up with it. They only got a week left.
I know. No kidding. It would be loser leaves Raw.
Yeah.
And then Brock would go to SmackDown.
Exactly. Ty Moore says, what wrestler, retired or still wrestling, would you love to see live at least once in your life?
Retired?
This is... Yeah. I want to see Dr. Wagner Jr. once in my life because I want to be in the crowd with his theme, which is Bon Jovi's Bad Medicine, which is a fantastic song.
That's good, yeah.
And I'll sing along with it, and then I want to hear him drop a promo.
Oh, that's good. That's a really good one. So what is it, on the verge of retirement?
It says, what wrestler retired or still wrestling? So they could be retired.
So I can go back in time?
As long as they're still living.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, can I see RVD at his peak?
Or
is it like somebody who's retired who I want to see come back?
Based on it seems like it's the latter. Yeah.
Yeah, dude. No, I like your idea. The stars of AAA. I'd love to see. If they come to LA for some reason. I'd love to see that.
You want to see Chessman versus Pagano either in a match against each other or as a tag
teaming together. Yeah, right.
Yeah, one of the two.
That sounds great.
One of the two. Let's get one more here. Andrew Connolly asked, do you think WWE should do what Impact does and use the Intercontinental Championship? You trade that in for a world title shot?
No. I do think that they should. I do think they should come up with a new cross-brand title, like the X Division
network title.
Yeah, and that one they can.
But they don't have like the networks on Peacock, at least here in the States.
Peacock title
doesn't really work.
That doesn't really work.
The
digital media. No, Impact already.
No, Impact has that already.
Yeah. No, just is the WWE. Yeah, I'd love for them to come up with like a new title for like really cool wrestling.
Yeah.
That's what I want to see.
That'd be great.
And you could use that as the option C thing, but they can only cash it into like an Intercontinental or US title.
Oh, okay. So you have a lower mid card title, and you can only cash in on the mid card title.
You can only go one step at a time. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Otherwise, you have to win Money in the Bank or the Rumble to guarantee yourself a title.
Right. There's already plenty of opportunities. 2 a year.
Yeah.
That's all you need. Anyways, that's going to do it for us. Thank you so much for all your questions. We appreciate it. If you want to submit your question, patreon.com/Steve and Larson, or you can go to youtube.com/Steve and Larson, and click join. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We appreciate it. Till next time, we'll see you around.
Goodbye.